I've always been the type of person who finds peace in the silence of the woods. There's something about being miles away from the nearest paved road that just clears your head. But after what happened 2 years ago in the Black Hills of South Dakota, I don't think I'll ever go back. It was late October. I had planned a solo 3-day hike through a section of the forest that wasn't exactly popular with tourists. I liked it that way. The first day was perfect. Crisp air, the smell of pine, and absolutely no one around. By 5 p.m., the sun was already dipping below the horizon, casting long, jagged shadows across the forest floor. I set up my tent, made a small fire, and settled in for the night. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. It wasn't the wind or a falling branch. It was rhythmic. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Something was walking in a slow circle around my tent. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. I tried to tell myself it was a deer or maybe a stray black bear, but the footsteps sounded heavy, deliberate. And then they stopped right outside the thin nylon wall of my tent. I held my breath, clutching my pocket knife. After a minute of silence, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. It was a low, wheezing breath, followed by a faint, metallic clicking sound, like someone flicking a lighter over and over again. I didn't sleep a wink. When the sun finally came up, I gathered my things as fast as I could. As I was packing my tent, I noticed something in the dirt. About 10 feet away, there were footprints, but they weren't paw prints. They were barefoot human tracks, abnormally long, and they led directly toward a dense thicket of pines. I decided to cut my trip short and head back to the trailhead, but as I hiked, I felt like eyes were on me. Every time I looked back, I saw nothing but trees. That was until I reached a clearing about 3 miles from my car. I looked up at a ridge about 50 yards away, and my stomach dropped. Standing among the trees was a man, but he didn't look right. He was incredibly tall, maybe 7 feet, and wearing a tattered dark suit that looked decades old. He was just standing there, perfectly still, staring down at me. He had no gear, no backpack, nothing, just that suit. I didn't wait. I bolted. I ran until my lungs burned, and I didn't stop until I reached my car. As I fumbled with my keys, I looked at my passenger side window. Pressed against the glass was a single muddy handprint. The fingers were twice as long as a normal human's. To this day, I wonder how he got to my car before I did, and what he would have done if I hadn't looked up at that ridge. My friend Caleb and I have been camping since we were kids. We're experienced, we know how to handle ourselves, and we never get spooked by the noises in the night. But what we encountered in the Appalachian wilderness last summer changed everything. We had hiked deep into a valley, far off the marked trails. We found a beautiful spot near a small creek and set up camp. It was a clear night, and the stars were incredible. We were sitting by the fire just talking when we heard a high-pitched whistle coming from the darkness across the creek. It was a short, 2-note whistle, like someone calling for a dog. We both went silent. "Did you hear that?" Caleb whispered. I nodded, reaching for my flashlight. I shined the beam across the water, but the light just got swallowed by the thick underbrush. A few seconds later, the whistle happened again, but this time it was closer, and it was coming from behind us. We stood up, back to back. I called out, "Hey, who's there?" No answer, just the sound of the creek. We decided to put the fire out and get into the tent, thinking it might be a local trying to mess with us. We lay there in the dark, listening. About an hour passed. I was just starting to drift off when I heard a voice. It was faint, barely a whisper, coming from just inches outside the tent fabric. "Caleb, come out here." My heart nearly stopped. It sounded exactly like me. The tone, the pitch, it was my voice. Caleb grabbed my arm, his hand shaking. He whispered, "I'm right here. Why are you outside?" I whispered back, "I'm not outside, Caleb. I'm right here next to you." The realization hit us both at once. Whatever was outside was mimicking me. The voice started laughing, a distorted, wrong-sounding laugh, and then we heard the whistling again, fading away into the woods. We stayed awake until dawn, clutching our bear spray. When we finally crawled out of the tent, we found our gear had been moved. Our boots, which we'd left in the vestibule, were lined up in a perfect circle 20 feet away from the tent. In the center of the circle was a small pile of bleached animal bones, teeth mostly. We hiked out in record time. We didn't talk until we were back in the city. The weirdest part, I checked my phone logs later that day. I had a missed call from Caleb's number at 3:15 a.m., the exact time we were sitting in that tent together. Caleb's phone had been turned off and buried in his bag the whole night. In 2019, I took a job as a seasonal ranger in a remote state park in Oregon. My job was mostly maintenance, clearing trails and checking on remote campsites. It was a lonely job, but I liked the solitude until the night of the red light. I was staying in a small one-room cabin about 12 miles from the main ranger station. One Tuesday night, around midnight, I was woken up by a strange humming sound. It was a low-frequency vibration that I could feel in my teeth. I looked out the window and saw a faint red glow coming from the valley below. Thinking it might be an illegal campfire or a flare from a stranded hiker, I grabbed my radio and my gear and started heading down the trail. The further I went, the louder the humming got. The air started to smell strange. Not like smoke, but like ozone. Like the air right before a massive thunderstorm. As I rounded a bend, I saw the source. In the middle of a clearing, there was a red light hovering about 5 feet off the ground. It wasn't a fire or a flashlight. It was a solid sphere of glowing red energy, about the size of a basketball. It wasn't moving. It was just pulsing. I pulled out my radio to call it in, but all I got was static. Not just regular static, but a series of rhythmic clicks that sounded like a heartbeat. Suddenly the red light vanished, just blinked out of existence. The woods went dead silent. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Then I heard a sound that made me freeze. It was the sound of a heavy zipper. Zip! It was coming from the darkness right in front of me. Then another. Zip! Then dozens of them all around me. The sound of tents or jackets being unzipped at the same time. I turned my headlamp to full brightness and scanned the clearing. There were no tents, no people. But as the light hit the trees, I saw hundreds of pairs of eyes reflecting back at me. They weren't deer eyes. They were low to the ground, and they were bright red. They started moving toward me, staying just on the edge of my light. I didn't yell. I didn't check my radio again. I just turned and ran back up that trail as fast as my legs would carry me. I locked myself in the cabin and pushed the heavy oak dresser against the door. All night, I heard something scratching at the walls. Not like an animal, but like fingernails on wood. And every few minutes, that low, rhythmic clicking would come through my radio, even though it was switched off. The next morning, I quit. When I went to get my things, I saw the scratches on the outside of the cabin. They weren't random. They were symbols. Strange, geometric shapes carved deep into the wood. I never found out what that red light was or what was in the valley that night. Some things are better left in the dark.